Hello, my friends. I hope you are well in the midst of this continued period of social distancing. Today, I want to welcome you back to the College Hill Church Sanctuary. I know many of you have missed this place quite a bit, and more importantly, you've missed one another. As I said this past Sunday, what a strange Holy Week this is, and kind of a sad one, too, as we have to spend it apart. Considering such realities, it is fitting then, I would say, that we attend to the work of Christ on Good Friday. This is a day that has always been a mixed bag for Christians. As its name suggests, it is indeed good, for in it we find God's answer for sin in Christ and the offering that he freely makes of himself for us. In that, we find our freedom and we find our forgiveness. This is where we come to know that, there is no gap that our God wouldn't bridge to reconcile us to himself. He loves us so much, he would die on our behalf. And indeed, he did just that. As God's children, we are loved, my friends, more so than we often realize. But the way in which he had to demonstrate his love also makes Good Friday a day of lament. How wonderful it is to consider we are so loved as to be worth dying for. How awful it is that God was forced to prove it. And so Good Friday is a day where we take some time and lament. We lament about the state of the world, that there are things out there like coronavirus and the death that it causes. Many other things, too, we lament over. Reminders of our frailty, our mortality, the brokenness and the evil of the world. Therein, and making us a little bit more personal, we also lament the sin and brokenness inherent within ourselves, in our own hearts. Those things that lead to death, and which also led Jesus to the cross. See, at the same time, we are grateful for his sacrifice. We can also mourn the fact that this is what it took for him to break the curse of our sin. Hence, appropriately, you'll find this place isn't particularly bright today in the sanctuary. I don't have a lot of lights on, and it's not very festive looking today. That's on purpose, and again, fitting for the occasion that we have today on Good Friday. Though, don't despair, my friends. Our Easter video will have a decidedly different tone. But let's not rush into that. Rather, in this moment, and perhaps on this Good Friday in particular, we might take a moment to lament. Let us lament the sin and brokenness of our world, and the sin and brokenness that we carry, again, as we mentioned, in our own hearts. Of course, we still hold our hope that as Christ died for us, we have forgiveness, and we will eventually see this Sunday that we have new life in the midst of it. But to get there, we have to go through this, the dark, the night, and even with this year in particular, the separation. And so as we attend to these truths right now, I'm going to have Bethany read our Passion Scripture in just a moment. As she's doing so, I'm going to strip the altar that you see behind me as a reminder of what a dark moment this was for humanity, when God was slain by the very people he came to save. And in that, I do invite you to remember the places where you stand in need of Christ's forgiveness, as uncomfortable as that is to do. And even as Bethany reads this dark, dark story, remember God's love for you in it. That even in the midst of this horrible moment in human history, he was writing a story of grace, bringing good out of evil, redemption out of bondage. Maybe let that truth speak into our current circumstances too. And so to remember that through these events, or that though these events are indeed disturbing and lamentable, it is through them that we can say in all confidence that we are loved, and that in the name of Jesus Christ, we are forgiven. Bethany?
Pilate called together the chief priests, the rulers, and the people, and said to them, "You brought me this man Jesus, as one who is inciting the people to rebellion. I have examined him in your presence, and have found no basis for your charges against him. Neither has Herod, for he sent him back to us. As you can see, he has done nothing to deserve death. Therefore, I will punish him and then release him." But the whole crowd shouted, "Away with this man, release Barabbas to us." Barabbas had been thrown into prison for an insurrection in the city and for murder. Wanting to release Jesus, Pilate appealed to them again, but they kept shouting, "Crucify him, crucify him." For the third time he spoke to them. "Why? What crime has this man committed? I have found in him no grounds for the death penalty. Therefore I will have him punished and then release him." But with loud shouts, they insistently demanded that he be crucified, and their shouts prevailed. So Pilate decided to grant their demand. He released the man who had been thrown into prison for insurrection and murder, the one they asked for, and surrendered Jesus to their will. As the soldiers led him away, they seized Simon from Cyrene, who was on his way in from the country, and put the cross on him and made him carry it behind Jesus. A large number of people followed him, including women who mourned and wailed for him. Jesus turned and said to them, "Daughters of Jerusalem, do not weep for me. Weep for yourselves and for your children. For the time will come when you will say, 'Blessed are the childless women, the wombs that never bore, and the breasts that never nursed.' Then they will say to the mountains, 'Fall on us,' and to the hills, 'Cover us.' For if people do these things when the tree is green, what will happen when it is dry?" 2 other men, both criminals, were also led out with him to be executed. When they came to the place called the Skull, they crucified him there, along with the criminals, one on his right, the other on his left. Jesus said, "Father, forgive them, for they do not know what they are doing." And they divided up his clothes by casting lots. The people stood watching, and the rulers even sneered at him. They said, "He saved others, let him save himself, if he is God's Messiah, the chosen one." The soldiers also came up and mocked him. They offered him wine vinegar and said, "If you are the king of the Jews, save yourself." There was a written notice above him, which read, "This is the King of the Jews." One of the criminals who hung there hurled insults at him. "Aren't you the Messiah? Save yourself and us." But the other criminal rebuked him. "Don't you fear God," he said, "since you are under the same sentence? We are punished justly, for we are getting what our deeds deserve, but this man has done nothing wrong." Then he said, "Jesus, remember me when you come into your kingdom." Jesus answered him, "Truly I tell you, today you will be with me in paradise."